Okay, hello everybody. It's Simon Dixon here, and welcome to episode 50 of Bank to the Future Live. We were hoping for slightly different times for our 50th episode, but we wanted to give everyone an update and just show our face and let people know some of the things that we're doing in reaction to the coronavirus crisis at the moment. And then also give you the opportunity of answering your questions. We totally understand and appreciate that some of you might have much more pressing things on your mind right now. But for those of you that may or may not, may be in some kind of isolation right now, and you're looking for something to do and you're still thinking about your portfolio, your investments, and how to react during these challenging times, then we are here to go live and answer your questions and let you know some of the things that we're up to and what we're doing as a team, and just kind of let you know that from our perspective, although the markets are very turbulent, both in the crypto side and the traditional markets, as well as the health crisis, we are doing everything we can to continue business as usual, while trying to be somewhat sensitive to the situation at hand. So that's what we're doing today. I've got it's going to be somewhat of a different episode, and we'll just start, I guess, the process by letting you know some of the things that we're doing at Bank to the Future. So the first thing to say is that we are continuing business as usual. We do operate in a way whereby everybody working in isolation and keeping our team safe in isolation is actually normal business for us because of the way that we actually operate. We've got team members all around the world, and most work in a virtual environment as well. So we were very much set up and prepared for such a situation that we didn't really see coming, obviously, but we're completely prepared for that. So a few things that we've been doing. Firstly, this episode, Bank to the Future Live, is specifically for our investors, our clients, building a portfolio or have an existing portfolio on Bank to the Future. Perhaps you're a token holder, you own Bank to the Future tokens, or maybe you're a client that's either raised funding through our platform, one of our portfolio companies, or you're looking at raising funding through our platform. Well, this episode is for you so please do ask your questions. You can do that in a number of different places. Either you're watching this on YouTube, in which place please use the YouTube Live. We have Famida here moderating to pick out your questions. We also have our Telegram channel at BF_token. That channel is where you can ask questions. Use the hashtag BF Live, and we'll try and pick that up as well if you're tweeting or on Twitter. That's ways you can ask questions. While this is more related to Bank to the Future questions, and we may cut this short because we may not have many, maybe people aren't thinking about investing in these times. Perhaps you are, we're not sure, but we want to continue as usual just in case, for those that are in that type of situation and predicament. But on the other side, I have been going live regularly on my personal Twitter at Simon Dixon Twit, and my personal YouTube channel, Simon Dixon, and on my Facebook profile as well. And you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Simon Dixon, and that's where I'm able to give slightly more my personal perspective and opinions about how I'm doing, what I'm doing during this financial crisis, some of the moves that I'm making, some of the different investments that I'm making, not as any type of financial advice, obviously, but also just to provide education and information during these turbulent times. So, for example, when Trump comes out and implements helicopter money, what does that mean today, tomorrow, and in the long-term future? when the interest rates are put down to zero, what does that mean for you? What's the bottom line impact? How does that affect Bitcoin? How does that affect the crypto markets in general? How does it affect the traditional markets as well? So I will continue to do that in service to those that want to understand, not just, I've been getting my information from many other content creators on the health crisis, and I'm trying to be of best service as I can to you in terms of understanding the financial crisis and some of the things that are as consequence that are going to come from, the environment that we are in right now. So please, if you are interested in learning more about, how the financial impact and what that's going to be, the consequences, then you can check out my personal YouTube channel as well, or my personal Twitter, where I will be going live. So in terms of what we're actually doing, so the first thing is, during these times, I'll be making sure that I give as much commentary as I possibly can. I am currently in a hotel. Very, very unfortunate timing. Next week, I should be able to get back into a part of my house. But at the moment, we're doing. We commenced a lot of building work, and my house is in, is somewhat of a building site at the moment. But we've created essentially in the outbuilding. We're getting that ready so that we can go back into there next week. So you'll notice a slight change of scenery. For now, it's the hotel room. And hopefully everything continues as usual from that side. But my commitment is to bring as many broadcasts to you so that you can just stay up to date and answer as many questions as I possibly can. Obviously, Bank to the Future Live is more focused on investors and Bank to the Future customers. But in terms of the other side, check out any of those streams. Will go live. For me, that's been pulling out all the questions as well. So we've been using some of our team's resources to try and give some kind of service and help to people during these times on the financial side in terms of trying to speculate where things might be going next. In the description, I believe the team would have put together a link to the playlist. And I've given 3 AMA sessions so far. The first was on Sunday, forecasting what will come next. The one after that was on Tuesday, after the big policy changes that had happened on Sunday, with interest rates, quantitative easing, helicopter money, banking reform, monetary reforms, and all sorts of other stuff. The reaction from the crypto markets, the decoupling, the coupling, and where we expect Bitcoin and crypto to go next. So yes, there's a URL in the description where you can see all those videos. We'll add it to the playlist, and you can catch up with those in your free time around whatever you need to be doing. In terms of, we've been, the Ballistics and then the team have been giving all team members, links to support and help. We've been had a personal hygiene recommendations based upon many of the information out there on the World Health Organization and others. Personally, whenever I'm going out, I've got some masks, and I've been using those not just for me. It often leads to ridicule where I am. People look at you. Some people actually get very offended, like, because of the fear factor. I don't really blame them. I'm not really in a position. There's a lot of uncertainty around these times. But I've been wearing masks, and often some people, saying it's absolutely ridiculous. But times are changing, and people tend to react as new information gets thrown at us. And half the time, it's just the fear of, some of these things making reality. But the reality is that there's a lot of information out there, whether these masks help or not. The reality is it stops you holding your face, touching your face, infecting yourself, and it also prevents things getting out to other people. So this is a group effort here. Washing my hands regularly, using these alcohol sprays or gels to try and make sure that we're burning off any contaminations, wearing plastic gloves, and just generally staying up to date with everything that's being recommended and happening out there. So, and also our team members, almost all of them are in isolation at their homes. They are able to work, continue business as usual, as Famida is right now, moderating. So all of our team members are at different locations. So there's geographical diversity. Should there be, some kind of, outbreak more in one region, we're making sure that we stay ultra precautious, and all of our team members are keeping themselves safe, and not exposing themselves to anything during this time. All investments are safe is not the right word. There is no interruption. Obviously, when you're investing in high risk, high return, those investments mean that the different markets have different effects on different companies. We believe that the crypto sector is perfectly positioned to create innovative products that can help not just during these health crises, but during the financial crisis and things that come to follow. So our original investment thesis is that the future of finance looks very different from the past. And we wanted to bring as many investment opportunities from innovative companies building different technologies to support the growth of the alternative finance sector. I still believe in that thesis. I believe that the future of finance still is going to look very different from the past. And, last year we were doing a lot of acquisitions. It just creates opportunities. A recession is simply a reallocation of resources from, inefficient markets to more efficient markets. And so we still feel that the investment thesis now more than ever is prevalent. And those that are in a position to still be building their portfolio, then I think that we're going to see lots of very interesting opportunities. For example, we did just release a new pitch live. We're not pushing that. Obviously, if you're from the US, you would actually have to be an existing customer because of the solicitation rules on this particular pitch. Those of you that are not from the US, we've put together, for example, in normal circumstance, this was a very high profile deal, a mining company that is essentially looking to compete with some of the large mining operations in China. Obviously there's a bit of a political situation between China and US, and hopefully politicians will put aside their differences, but we haven't really seen that. We've seen politicians using these opportunities to snub at each other in the trade wars between America and China, even when the supply chain's breaking down, which is a really unfortunate thing to see. But also that affects Bitcoin mining, and one of the largest companies in the industry has just launched. They've received funding from Peter Thiel, Winklevoss Capital, Digital Currency Group. And normally, we would have a very challenging time trying to get in that round. We were working really hard with the team, getting their private placement memorandum all signed off. Because of the situation, we're able to get the exact same terms for when RSBV invests. So we're not obviously pushing these things at the moment because we're somewhat sensitive, but we will be continuing to do that. We're working with lots of other companies that we had signed contracts with. We've already signed new contracts with new companies. We're just trying to be sensitive and understand the best timing. And so all of the pitches that we've put live, the layer 1 pitch was originally going to be a 14-day campaign. But due to the situation, because we want to be somewhat sensitive, people are going to have to figure out, what type of resources they've got allocated towards investing. We tend to focus on those that have built significant wealth in the crypto space. But, obviously times are changing and people need to decide. So we've asked those pitches to extend for up to 60 days so that people can really just gauge where the market's going next, what's going to happen with Bitcoin and Ethereum and the other currencies that we accept, whether, the different reactions that they're going to see in the market. So we are asking our clients to extend those pitches just so that people can really just gauge what they want to do, and give you maximum opportunity to get in those at the timing that you think is right, rather than in a bit of a rushed frenzy. So we're really grateful to be able to bring opportunities to invest in such companies at the same valuations as high profile investors like Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, in industries that traditionally would never have been available to investors unless you're actually full-time venture capitalist. So the message is that as we are registered with our regulator, and our registration requires us to have disaster recovery and contingency planning processes, so that if any of our key staff or key team members, if something were to happen to those, we have practices. We had to think about these, way before we actually ever had a disastrous situation. We're not at that phase right now, but we have processes and policies in place, and measures to ensure that no matter what happens, there's backup plans for your investments, no matter where this goes. So you can continue with the reassurance that your investments are safe, but that doesn't, just got to be careful with the wording here. It doesn't mean that some of your companies may not be affected by a recession, or by the crisis situation, the health crisis we're dealing with right now. In terms of our banks and payment providers, we have been in contact with them, business as usual, service as usual. The particular banks that we work with, that we have partnered with over the years, they are also in a position to work in a virtual environment. Some of the payment processors, they are also in a position to be able to, for people to work from home, and continue business as usual. We have also been questioning them on their policies and what they've been doing with their team members. So we're making sure that we're eliminating any exposures that might come as a result of any interference in the banking and payment system. But then also remember, that is part of the original mission here, that in times of banking crisis, Bitcoin still continues, Bitcoin still works. And even when financial institutions don't work, crypto still works. So this is why what we've been building as a community over the 10 years, and what our community has put $850 million in funding rounds listed on our platform over the years. It's building the technology and building the products that I believe are actually going to be significantly more important than just a business opportunity in years. This is showing that creating these tools that hedge against our traditional financial system is going to be increasingly more important in the future. And as we move to a global workforce, more and more working from home, these technologies are going to become increasingly important. So we still believe that the work here to be done, while you all might have more important things to focus on, we still believe that this is important work that we will continue, and we can't do that without our clients and our investors and our community. We've also been building reserves, so in situations like this, we're able to cut back essentially some of the resources and some of the planned expansion plans, but we've also got reserves to cover and continue things as we usually are. What else have I got for you? The BFT members, we've discussed about that. That's the most important thing, and making certain recommendations as well. In terms of new deals, as I said, we are working on new deals. We are signing new customers. We are signing new clients. New investors are still signing up to our platform. Things are still continuing and working as they should. And we see no reason why that should interfere, depending on obviously what happens in the health crisis, and how long that actually goes on for. But we've made sure that we've got significant runway, and put together lots of safeguards for situations like this. And we are really excited about many of the clients that we've got coming up in the pipeline, both from new, small, innovative startups to some of the most established companies in crypto, where the opportunity to invest in them has never been available to investors through our platform, or any other means. So We will continue to stay up to date. We've got our, our investor relations team, making sure that they're there to support investors as you have questions, and as they come through, depending on when you're ready to actually engage. And also our clients, we've got our pitch management team, that we've got resources there, making sure they're staying in touch with all our clients. We're also going to use this opportunity to significantly bump up our investor relations program. We know that that's one of the, you know, in times like this, in times of uncertainty, people want communication. Maybe you're not ready to receive that communication at that moment in time, but at least we can provide that for you, so that when you need to look, when you're ready to receive such information. We've been working on how we can innovate, more Zoom calls and broadcasts like this, to support our clients in giving investor updates in times when they are going to be extremely time poor, extremely resource poor, and seeing how we can support our clients in that important investor relation task. But please do appreciate that the clients have a lot on their plate right now, in order to make adjustments. Maybe they might have been used to an office environment and they need to adjust to implementing systems so that everybody can be connected. All the technology exists. We've been operating Bank to the Future like that for a long time. And so we're giving any support to our clients in helping them adjust to such an environment, because it's incredible at the same time as being in very challenging times with this health situation. It's also one of the most remarkable times whereby, isn't it amazing that this is probably one of the first times in human history that people can work from home. I appreciate some of you might have careers and jobs and businesses where it's not quite possible. I hope that you get through this situation, but recognize that this is an opportunity to relook at your systems, relook at the way you're operating your work life, and understand that this is probably one of the first times in human history where we can have a crisis like this, where people need to be in isolation in their homes, and yet a business like ours can still continue and operate and function incredibly well. Isn't that a remarkable thing that's come out of technology? And even then, when the banking system, if the banking system comes under fire, we still have financial services, we still have the crypto industry, whereby people can transact globally from their homes, and still communicate through technology. It's just a remarkable time, and we need to appreciate that over the decades, such innovation has all been created to support us in a time like this, when there's people that need to be at home in order to remain safe. In terms of new products and new product lines, we are still continuing to build BFX, our planned security token exchange. I think it would be a very irresponsible and silly time to launch such a product. So we're going to use this opportunity to really, build out some code, get a lot more lines of code done out there. We were also exploring opportunities for the Bank to the Future security token, BFXT. Our team has come together, taken all of the feedback from our shareholders, from Bank to the Future token holders, the utility token. We've taken a lot of feedback from new investors, old investors, and we're really excited about new ways in which we can actually construct this product to support both the Bank to the Future token ecosystem, those that are existing shareholders, and the team have been working on some really, really innovative solutions there. So we're going to be postponing that. We're looking at probably, depending on how things unfold, we're probably not looking until maybe a September launch, depending on the environment and the situation that unfolds. This is a new development that we want to launch in the correct way, but we will be using this opportunity to put together much more tighter audits and completing many of our processes that we needed to do before the launch, so that our investors can access the financial data, the financial information that we wanted to give to our investors. And also, we've been planning our new roadmap and new priorities internally, and using these opportunities to really get get around to some of the things that you don't necessarily get to do when you're very, very busy servicing new clients, new customers, new investors, and onboarding. So BFX and BFXT, we're going to be pushing those over, which gives us the ability to refine those and make them a lot better for when the market is ready for that. And our investor relations all continues as usual, and many, many partners that we've been catching up. But really, it's really great to catch up with all of our clients and portfolio companies, understand some of the challenges that they're having, but also just recognizing this incredible community that we built around crypto. I've been watching some of the crypto content creators during these times, while, been incredibly busy implementing lots of different things and making sure everything's continuing as usual. But I've also been making sure that I've been, taking out some time to watch some of the content creators. I really appreciate some of the content that's coming from Hong Kong, from the Box Mining channel. Michael has been doing a great job of giving regular updates on the coronavirus situation, and I think he's been doing a great service. Also really appreciate some of the work that Naomi Brockwell has been doing on her YouTube channel, and various other channels and content that I've been consuming, and obviously my personal YouTube channel, been making sure that we're covering the financial side. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on something that I'm not an expert on, but when it comes to finance and analyzing the different policies that are being implemented during these challenging times, I've been working on this subject for, well, pretty much the last 20 years of my life, since I started studying economics, doing a master's in economics, working in the investment banking environment in both stockbroking, market making, and corporate finance, doing IPOs, then working with students and graduates in getting them qualified to with various different financial qualifications. And then obviously Bank to the Future, looking to originally launch an alternative bank, a non-fractional reserve bank, being a part of the monetary reform community before the Bitcoin community started, and then joining the Bitcoin community, speaking at the first Bitcoin conference in the world, writing the very first book that covered the published book that included Bitcoin, and really writing 10 years ago the book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future Before Governments Go Bust. And reviewing that, although blockchain wasn't the thing that it is today, we didn't understand things like stable coins and central bank digital currencies. Actually, the recommendations that I put in that book are completely relevant here today. Obviously, the market has changed a lot. Bitcoin is a completely new, in a completely different position to when it was back then. Just been involved in all the different companies, now investor in over 100 different companies in the industry, get to see a unique perspective. And if I can, condense down extremely complex financial, jargon and make it more easy for people to consume, then I will continue to do that as well. What else have I got for you before we start taking some of your questions? If you could start getting some of your questions ready. The Bank to the Future token, there were a lot of questions around the Bank to the Future token. Our token has really been hit during the crash in the crypto market, and it was coupled with something that we don't have too much information on at this stage. We just got the information that we were given. We were contacted by one of our Bank to the Future token holders in Korea, and they were in a, sorry, I'm making sure I've got to really concentrate on not touching my face. That's why I wear these masks when I'm out, because it makes your face a bit itchy, and I'm trying to make sure I don't do that. So just going to put on some of the antiseptic as I do that as well. But what happened with the Bank to the Future token is one of our token holders in Korea wrote to us. They got 8.5 million tokens hacked, not through our platform, not through our wallet, not through a breach in our token. There is no security risk in terms of, there was no breach or hack. It was just a personal identity hack that this individual investor went through. And he sent us the wallet addresses, and we tracked those wallet addresses, and they made their way over to the Hobby Exchange. We contacted the Hobby Exchange to try and get those tokens frozen. They told us that they will need to get a police report before they can do anything. So those tokens were dumped onto the market at any price. And so that created a double whammy where we were going through a crash in the market anyway. And then these 8.5 million tokens were dumped onto the market at any price as fast as possible so that the hacker could steal the money and get it out of Huobi. We've given some recommendations to the person. We contacted Huobi, and now we need to leave it to the authorities. But unfortunately, during these times, authorities have much more prevalent things to think about, as all of our, health and police resources around the world all being stretched to their limits at the moment. So unfortunate situation, but that's what we saw that led to a big correction in the price. A reaction that we did to that, because the hacker was probably trying to manipulate the market in certain ways so that it could get out faster, we decided temporarily to suspend our Bank to the Future purchase feature, whereby people can buy tokens through the Bank to the Future platform fast and easily. We suspend that, so if anyone is looking to purchase Bank to the Future tokens at these low prices in order to get hold of some of the utility of the fact that you can use it to get priority access to deals, you can use it to get 50% discounted trading on our secondary market, for those of you that are doing that. And also, if you own over 100,000 Bank to the Future tokens, you also get the opportunity to have rewards in Bank to the Future tokens every time you invest through the platform. So if anyone is looking to do that, they'd have to do it through the exchange. We just suspended that for now while we're going through some of this volatility, but that feature will come online once we understand where the market's going again. For now, if anyone wants to do that, they'd have to go through the exchange as usual. What else have we got on? Remember, there is, for those of you, obviously, I appreciate some of you will have much more prevalent things on your mind. But one of the things that our investors have been requesting the most is an update to the portfolio section of the account. We've had to push a couple of other things in the pipeline. We had to rebuild a new investment payment transactional system for US investors to escrow based upon some recommendations and changes in regulations that we need to adjust to. So that's pushed back some of the portfolio features that we need to build out, and also integrations with our broker-dealer partners. Last year, we made several strategic investments and acquisitions. One of those was in Diacall. The whole team have now been onboarded and integrating with the Bank to the Future team. And also the US team with BMI Capital, the US broker-dealer, and also the altcoin.io, which is now going to be the foundation of the security token exchange. So we've been working on those, bringing those team members in, and that's pushed back the portfolio release slightly, but it's still very much one of the most important features that we're looking to release, so that you can get really good data on understanding the value of the companies in your portfolio, getting access to the documentation that you need at the right time, and just having a general understanding of the value of any dividends you've received, any exit proceeds you've received, and the value of the companies. We know that this is a really important feature. We are chomping at the bit to bring this to you, but technology just takes time. Good code takes time, and we have to prioritize and work on many of the compliance challenges as regulatory environments unfold as well. But anyway, if you wanted to give feedback on the portfolio, then there is a blog post that should be in the link where you can get a screenshot of the designs and how that will be looking. As mentioned, Layer 1 was the new pitch that we put live for our non-US investors, and our existing US investors are going to be, this is for the existing US investors, then you have to check out the account if you've already got an account on Bank to the Future as well. And as I said, we've got 5 pitches. In terms of portfolio news, I'm not sure. I can return back to portfolio news, but at this stage, I'm not sure if there's been much active conversation going on in terms of people viewing this on the live show. So let's move over to Famida now and see if we've got any questions that I can go through as we before I do the portfolio news.
Cool. So actually, I guess what one of our portfolio news that we could talk about is layer one. Somebody did ask a question yesterday about layer one. And so if you could just give us a little bit more information about what's happening, has it slowed down? How long will it be open for? Has the minimum investment gone down?
Yeah, so there's a slight challenge with this pitch, and that is that it's what known, I don't want to go too deep into the regulations, but it's what's known as a 506B pitch, which means that for US investors, we can't do general solicitation. So I have to be careful about what I discuss on this pitch. For non-US investors, obviously, we have a compliant onboarding process, and for existing investors. So as much as I would love to go through that, we're going to have to ask that we do that in a contained environment because of the regulatory, that any discussion around that pitch as it is live right now would have to happen on the investor zone, because we need to ensure that I'm not speaking to investors that are not permitted to be able to invest in that offering. Just trying to remain compliant these times. So as much as I'd love to do that, there's certain restrictions that we have to make. But if you go over to the pitch and you head over to the investor zone, if you already are a US investor, already have an account with us, then you'll be able to ask such questions. And if you're a non-US investor, then there's less restrictions that I could go through. So as much as I'd love to answer that, please use the investor zone to ask that questions. What I can say is that instead of a short pitch, we've made it a long pitch to give people the opportunity. And it's I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Okay, no worries. I mean, so like the basic steps would be, actually you do need to be an accredited US investor, and you need to have a fully verified BF account basically before you can have access to this pitch and head into the investor zone to ask your questions, right? Okay.
And this particular offering, the way that a 506B offering remains compliant is you'd have to have already had an established relationship with us for at least 30 days in order to gain access to that as well.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I mean, so if an account gets verified, certified, then they have to wait 30 days before they can access the pitch investor zone?
In this particular case, the way, so maybe this is interesting to people, maybe not, but let me share some of the regulatory environment in the US. So in the US, you have certain different types of pitches. You have, you have public companies and private companies. With public companies, it means that essentially they're open to anybody, but you have to go through a extremely rigorous and expensive process of getting that company approved by the regulator to trade and be a public company on a stock market open to all. With private companies, the way that regulators do this is they say there are certain types of investors that we believe don't need as much protection, and they tend to be that they're of a level of sophistication whereby they can kind of protect themselves and they don't need additional investor protection measures. Or they can afford to lose the money, and therefore regulators think that if you can afford to lose the money, then you don't need as much protection as somebody that can't afford to lose that money. So you have these certain restrictions that are put in place in order to eliminate that. Then over time, so at BnkToTheFuture, way back in 2009, 2010, when we wanted to originally create a process for people to be able to invest online, there just wasn't a process. You couldn't do it. We were in the UK at the time, and we had to spend 3 years with regulators trying to get them to change their policies to allow for this to actually happen. But after that 3 years process, it was such a successful process that the US decided to look at what happened in the UK and create something called the Jobs Act. And in the Jobs Act, it took about 5 years to implement. And it gradually opened up the definition of how you could do these private offerings. And part of it was that at the time, you can either have an offering where you do no solicitation and you only promote it to accredited investors that you already have an established relationship with it. And there's been lots of case law over time that stated the definition of what an established relationship is. And so if we've spent a minimum of 30 days with such investors, they are accredited, they are verified, then they can access such deals on our platform. The innovation that came from the Jobs Act was something called 506C offerings. That's what's called a 506B offering. There were many more as well, but the particular ones that we utilize on the platform. And a 506C offering states that you can go out and you can tell the world and you can solicit what they call and tell everybody about something. But there are certain rules around when you can and when you can't do that. So this particular pitch that we were talking about is a 506B offering, which doesn't allow for solicitation. So you've got to be careful around that. And obviously, you know, the 506C offerings is where you can do certain solicitation. So it may be confusing to some of our investor community of why sometimes we don't talk about deals and why other times we can talk about deals. But this is the reason, because we've got to ensure that we remain compliant with securities laws, not just in the US for US investors, but other regulations and other jurisdictions, which was really a 10-year process that we've been working on. The way that we actually achieve that again as well is that we keep certain conversations that I know the crypto world is just used to, open communication and Twitter, Telegram, and freedom to say whatever you choose. And you know, we really love that world, but unfortunately we don't live in that world because we are subject to certain regulations that we have to adhere to in securities laws. And obviously during 2017, every company in the world was, or sorry, every ICO and token offering was breaching all of those securities laws. And then it took 3 years for them to all get their enforcement actions while we were trying to remain compliant with these rules. And everyone got used to a certain way of doing things. And now it's a bit of a shock that they're learning that, oh, actually there are, you know, decades and decades of history and regulations and rules around this stuff. So that's a long answer to a short question. I'd love to just sit here and answer that, but it has to be a certain type of pitch for me to be able to speak about to such things in a public environment.
I do have a follow-on question to that then, Simon. So like, say if there is an accredited investor that has successfully invested in such a pitch, 506B, right? So what happens what are the implications and what happens if that person goes off and speaks on a completely different forum, on a social media platform, and they talk about that pitch? What are the implications? What does that mean?
So officially, you know, you'd need to get your own legal advice around that, but essentially you are making a solicitation on something that is not meant to have a solicitation. So, you know, I don't think, again, I don't want to get into giving legal advice. You'd have to get your own opinions on this, but it's worth noting that when you sign up to BnkToTheFuture.com, in order for us to get clients to be able to make such offerings on our platform, very often the high profile deals are only open to, you know, a small group of venture capitalists. And we work really, really hard to be able to get access to such offerings. And we've established relationships over the years. So we get access to deals that no one else gets access to unless they are a small, in that tight knit group of venture capitalists. And so when, you know, people are not respectful of the information that's shared in these things, one, it is a breach of our terms. You sign a non-disclosure agreement on the way in, and our terms and conditions do not permit for sharing of confidential information. But you may actually be making a solicitation inadvertently in something that's not allowed to have a solicitation. So it's worth being careful about these things. I can't give you legal advice in terms of what the consequences are and what you should do with that. But really, the best that one can take is just communicate in the way that our technology allows you to communicate, and you should be okay.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So the next question I have here. Simon, what do you think about the recent quantum technology?
So I'd probably normally save that one for a personal stream, because it's not so relevant to Bank to the Future and Bank to the Future customers. But there is, just to give context to the question and acknowledge it, there is a worry in the crypto community that quantum technology, if it is implemented, and again, I am nowhere near technically qualified enough to have an opinion about quantum technology, but there is a general risk that it breaks cryptography. And my personal opinion is, if cryptography is broken and hashing algorithms are broken, then yes, that's bad for Bitcoin, but it's also bad for everything, because our banking system operates off cryptography. All of the systems that we use in terms of security operate off the same cryptography. And some of the highest level security governments operate off that. So if quantum computing cracks this cryptography, it would be bad for Bitcoin, and it would be bad for many other things. But I think it would just be some kind of adjustment to a quantum resistant cryptographic. And I'm probably butchering the technology here. I need to take that question to someone way more technically competent than I am. But my answer to that is, there would be bigger problems in the world if and when that happens. And I think we would have adjusted at that time, probably to more quantum resistant algorithms.
Okay, cool. So the next question we have here, actually there's a couple of questions around this subject, which is, I guess, when will Bank to the Future spare a dedicated hour to its investors? And another person has mentioned also that dozens of questions and concerns have been raised on the Bank to the Future Investor Zone earlier in the year. So how will we go forward in tackling and reaching out particular investors directly about a particular investment?
So if you want particular support, we have a support center. The Investor Zone is there for communication. I think one of the initiatives that we're working on at the moment is the ability to get a flow of Zoom conference calls whereby we can actually do investor dedicated calls. We're going to be putting some additional resources into that. We already did our first one with recently. And with the new acquisitions and strategic investments we've made, we've added a lot of additional team members that come from the investor relations, financial services, compliance, and all these different back office areas. And we will be looking to utilize more and more of the team in order to really beef up investor relations support. We recognize that it's a challenge. We've been trying to overcome it for a long time, which is, you have these busy companies that are time poor and starved, and you've got investors that want updates in order to ensure that they're feeling comfortable with the investments that they've made, and that progress is being made. So we've traditionally we use technology in order to try and provide that, and I think we can do a lot more. In terms of our personal shareholders, I've been releasing videos every quarter for our shareholders, but I want to beef that up and get a bit more interactive as well. So I'd like to create just sessions like this dedicated just for shareholders, But then, we only have so many hours in a day, and it's an extremely time-consuming thing. And in times like this, while we do have a good team, we also have to be conservative in terms of the additional resources in order to make sure the existing team are all stretching themselves, and we're all pushing ourselves a lot further to make sure that we can deliver what our investors are looking for. But remember, any feedback you have, do submit a support ticket. For me, there's always there on investor relations with the rest of the team. And any of your suggestions that you have, then we want to do more, and we only have so many hours in the day. And but we're always here to take those suggestions and see how we can improve on these things.
Okay, I have just a couple more questions left. Are you okay with time, and do you think you'll have time to do the portfolio news?
Yeah, I mean, let's just go. We'll cover the final two questions if that's cool, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so secondary peer-to-peer trading would be helpful for investors in these challenging times. Are there any plans to extend to all assets on BnkToTheFuture?
Yeah, so we have our secondary market right now. The ability for people to sell. So what we're doing, the big lesson of the beta version of our secondary market is that because private equity is a patient game, and it's very, very high risk, high return environment, often people need liquidity. And so for no reason other than needing liquidity, in a fairly illiquid market, the price can just be irrationally moved to a discount on the valuation. So you have the valuation of the company, which is the price of the last funding round, and then you have the valuation of the special company where we hold shares. We create a secondary market in those, and what we've learned is that sometimes having a secondary market for one investor's benefit can really work against the company and other investors, because if one needs liquidity and they're willing to just really, really accept any price for it, especially if they're sat on ginormous gains. So a company like Kraken, for example, the Series A investors to the Series B investors had a 200x increase in price. And when you're on a 200x increase in price, if you're in some kind of liquidity situation where you need to get funds, then you might be willing to sell at a 100x increase, great returns anyway. But then that can be very destructive for the company, because the company needs to continually increase its valuation as it progresses and grows and meets new milestones. And that's very important. The price for the company is very important. And also the other investors that don't necessarily need the liquidity don't want to see the price going down just because somebody needed liquidity. So the solution to that is implement a price floor. And so for the peer-to-peer market that we have, our secondary market, we want to implement a price floor, which is the next feature that we will be implementing to take the secondary market out of beta, whereby if you want to sell, you can sell at the price of the last funding round, you can sell at a profit, but you can't sell at a loss. And so anybody that wants to come in and purchase those shares can do that at the same price as the last funding round, or at a higher price. But it can't be used in order to drive the price down, because it's just the nature of this peer-to-peer, private company, and that's why I think it's why there has never been markets like this, and why our secondary market is so innovative. But that's the real big lesson that we've learned, and that will be the feature that we'll be implementing. So in the meantime, if anyone, if any of our qualifying investors are looking to purchase on the secondary market, until we come out of beta, then there is the discounts that are applicable before we introduce the price floor. So do we want to make it open for every single deal? Well, there's certain deals where it's restricted by regulation, so it's not quite as simple. There's other deals where it's restricted by the investment contracts that we originally signed, whereby the SPV shares are non-transferable. There's other deals where the companies are failing, and we don't want a failing company the ability for insiders that have been there for a while to dump their shares onto someone that doesn't know the company's failing. And therefore we have to restrict certain things. So it's not possible to do this just completely open. We have to be somewhat considerate of what is right, given that in private equity you have isometric information where the insiders and directors often have the most information. The shareholders might have a bit more information. The SPV shareholders might have a bit more. The directors might have a bit less, and the new investors have less information. So these are really important things that we need to consider before we take our secondary market out of beta and put more and more deals on there, and before we're willing to be in a position to actually do some more aggressive marketing to the right people that are right for our secondary market.
Okay, and finally, I guess there is just a really obvious concern that I'm seeing in the live chat about BFT. And I guess maybe if you could just close out on this one and just talk about like, how is it that we can avoid or help BFT not plummet, or how do we make it more useful?
So, the cold hard reality is that the BnkToTheFuture token, I'm not here to talk about price. I can't even talk about price. It's not, the utility token, BnkToTheFuture token, is for use on the platform. If you want to invest in BnkToTheFuture, the company, then that's what equity is for. If you are looking to purchase a token, it's for using on the platform. Now, because it's also listed on cryptocurrency exchanges, then it's subject to all market conditions and all crypto crashes and the correlation between the Bitcoin markets and the crypto markets. What we see is that tokens tend to dump harder than Bitcoin during tough times, and they tend to pump harder than Bitcoin during good times. And so, our job is not to intervene in the market. That would be very manipulative. Our job is to provide features that make the token useful for people to use, and that's what we see our role as doing. If this was an investment for you, then you should be looking at equity and investment products, as opposed to the cryptocurrency, the digital token, which I believe it is a function of the network effect on the platform. And we got plenty more features that we're looking to implement to make the token more useful, including looking at certain how it interacts with security tokens, how it interacts with BFX when we launch that. But for now, we've got the use cases of priority access to deals, for utilizing for paying secondary market trading fees, and for the rewards and the ability to make more investments. The token was created for our platform investors that want to utilize the token in order to get more utility out of BnkToTheFuture, the platform. There are many interesting things one can do to support the token, but then it would turn it into an investment and a security, in which case it would then get delisted from cryptocurrency exchanges, because cryptocurrency exchanges don't have licenses to sell investments or securities. So you got to be very careful what you ask for. While there's many things that we could do to turn it into a security, but you'd want that to be in a more buoyant security token market, because the idea behind the utility token is that people can purchase it from a cryptocurrency exchange. We create utility at BnkToTheFuture. Other people can create utility as well as they choose. But we're not here to engage in price support or price manipulation. In fact, it's very important for us to avoid such matters, because that's then we would be a market participant that has access to more information, I guess. So in saying that, also we're really excited about looking at the higher end membership tiers, and also some really interesting DeFi solutions and security token solutions. But the market is the market. You're not going to beat the market by releasing innovation in a time when people are fearful. The reality is that you got to get the timing right. And again, it's the difference between understanding the difference between a utility token. So one of the things we do when we launch the Bank to the Future security token is create a real clear quadrant for people to understand what the Bank to the Future utility token is for, what the security token is for, what equity in the company, direct equity, is for, and what SPV equity might be for. And that's one of the things that we're working on at the moment, to make sure that everyone can get clear information and they can decide which corner they want to be, and also make them completely interoperable, so that if you choose that you want to go from Bank to the Future token, the utility token, to the security token, to equity, then we can make seamless user experiences. If you want to engage in the security token side, then we can make those seamless user experiences. All of this takes time to build. But I guess, have it be known that we are, as a company, as it was shown on our token sale page, the largest token holder in Bank to the Future token, and the one that has the most to gain from creating a really buoyant economy around our utility token. But we're not going to engage in short-term price manipulation and buybacks and things that ruin it just for someone to just engage in a pump and dump. That's not our game.
Cool, that's it from me with all the questions, Simon.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to close off with some portfolio news. So give me a second. We are almost done. And thank you very much to everybody in Famida for bringing up those questions. I wasn't quite sure whether we'd have much engagement in these times. I guess everyone's in a different situation. Let me share the screen, and I'll do this one very quickly because we just got a few minutes before we close off. And actually, just before I do that, I'm going to switch my camera off. Okay, so in terms of portfolio news, we had Uphold, one of the really early companies. Uphold's a really interesting one. They were originally called BitReserve, and they were one of the early VC-backed companies in our industry. They had a very challenging time after, they were right up there with the likes of Coinbase and everybody. They went through a challenging time as they had a management restructuring. And at one time, it looked like they were, under a real uncertain time. They've done a very successful turnaround, and they're releasing great products now. They've just released their new debit card that lets you pay with Bitcoin, XRP, and gold. So good to see Uphold. They were actually the original people thinking about what later became a stable coin. So they had a wallet whereby you could put your Bitcoin in, it could be backed in terms of dollars, and then you could go in and out and hedge your bets, which later the stable coin became the innovation that most people used. But it's really interesting. Coinbase becomes a Visa Principal member. So Coinbase going from strength to strength to strength in terms of getting impact in the traditional financial, the on-ramps and off-ramps between fiat and crypto. Let's get rid of the advertising. Tether boosts DeFi lending. So Tether is looking at producing, so iFinex, one of our portfolio companies, and one of the companies listed on our secondary market via our SPV structure. They're looking at boosting some more DeFi lending and interesting. DeFi is actually becoming very interesting during these challenging times because we're seeing the first test of many of the solutions. As the markets crash, you get margin calls, and we're seeing how some of the companies, the DeFi companies, and some of the more centralized finance companies out there, how they react to that and how things unfold. So it's getting a big test right now. So that's really interesting. I had a story here, but it looks like we've been covered by advertising. I really need to use the Brave browser. I haven't got around to that yet. But crypto exchange Kraken gets into traditional Forex. So this creates a really interesting opportunity because now you can go crypto to dollars and then dollars to different currencies and traditional currencies to get your funds out in different ways. So this is really interesting that the crypto exchanges like Kraken getting into traditional Forex and making more opportunities to go in and out easier. And another one with Coinbase card now available on Android through Google Play. So lots of different things that are happening right now, but overall, everyone overall is going to be preoccupied with making sure that their customers are safe and planning for that. So I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. I wish that episode 50 could have been slightly different. So my final thoughts are, make sure that you're keeping yourself safe. One of the advice that I've been giving on my live broadcasts, on my personal Twitter and YouTube channel, is that you're going to be faced with a lot of information that gives you lots of reasons to be very fearful. And there's two ways that you can take that fear. Remember, the meaning that you give anything is simply a function of your brain and your mind and your experience. So everyone, what we tend to do is we attach meaning to things. Those meaning is simply a function of our background and experience. And so when you encounter information that makes you fearful, you tend to attach your own meaning to it. It may not be real, it may not be based upon reality. But we have choices of how to actually use that information. One way of using it is to actually take in enough information that that makes you precautious. So, I was talking about being slightly precautious at different times during this crisis. I wasn't taking it as seriously as we should, and then other people are ridiculing you for taking it too seriously. And everyone has an opinion and different perspective depending on where they fit in that parameter at the moment. But what I've been trying to do is use fearful information, is very sad information. My hearts are out with anybody who has been affected, either themselves, their loved ones, people around them. It is a time for solidarity and see if we can help each other at the same time as having to be in isolation. So very, very strange and interesting time. But one way is using that information to paralyze you into not being able to do something, not being able to function. Or you can use that fear to take the right level of information, take the precautions that you need, but also, use in a more empowering way, change the meaning in which you give that to yourself in order to see how you can be of value, how you can serve, how you can be of, assistance. We have different levels of influence that we can have. And I find that people that spend too much time in things that they can't influence tend to allow fear to paralyze them, versus people that actually think about things that they can try and help and influence in any small way that they can, whether it's large or small. Then there's a cumulative effect of all these things that help. So use fear to serve you, to make sure that you keep yourself protected and take the right decisions, but don't use it to paralyze you so that you end up in a state of not being able to function. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and a vicious spiral. So that's my message to everybody. We will continue to do these live sessions, whether it's the economy or my personal, or our weekly show for our Bank to the Future customers and clients. And as always, give us your suggestions. Let us know what you think. We will try and return back to these comments, and hopefully, we'll be going live next week for episode 51 of Bank to the Future Live.